people like concrete rules, and when they're sold rules, they want to make sure that they're getting what they bought into. I always bring this up, but we saw this happen with the NFL's domestic violence policy, where you come out and hammer and say 6-day minimum with room for less or more in the fine print, and all of a sudden you get yourself into trouble because you're not delivering on what you promised. And if it's something in a vein of something you're truly interested, like pace of play, that's a mistake.
It was a first step at a time when the dysfunction is greater than I've seen it in 15 years. And the relationship between the two sides is the worst it's been in 15 years. I'm going to be curious to see if during the course of the summer, if the players on the field, it'll essentially be civil disobedience. Okay, the rule is 6. Well, you know what? If I go to a 7th time, an 8th time, a 9th time, what are you going to do? I do wonder if Manfred, is seeing the reaction to this and thinking to himself, you know what? If we were going to have all of this discord and his public complaining, and maybe that it even goes on during the course of the summer, I wish I'd just come out, okay, fine. You know what? I'll put in the pitch clock. If we're going to have complaining either way, we might as well go in hard. The reason why there's so many mound visits now is because of the fact that the runner at second base will often steal signs and relay them back to the hitter. And that's why they go out and do verbal signs between the catcher and the pitcher so often.
The games in 2005 were much, much shorter. That's at least what the graphic said this morning. I'm not sure. Obviously for me and people that get paid to do this, that's what they're here to do. I'm here to pitch, I'm here to play baseball, but I would just simply go 2005. Hey, what was in 2005 that was causing these games to be much shorter, and what do we have now? Is it the replay system? Is it the fact that technology, is very advanced, so players individually, maybe rightfully so, or maybe just because we're guaranteeing everything is a fair playing field, are we taking longer? I don't know what that answer is. The whole thing they showed was maybe 3 or 4 minutes long. For that to be their big emphasis, I don't think that's it, and I just think that it does more harm than good, at least from the pitching side.
For a couple years now, people have said, let's just put the best 16 teams in the playoffs, which in theory could mean 11 teams from the West and 5 from the East in a year. This is not that. And this is why this has a fighting chance. Because honestly, think about this. For a vote to pass in the NBA, you need 20 out of 30 owners to vote for something. If you're an Eastern Conference owner, if you're even one Eastern Conference owner, why would you vote for straight 1 through 16? Adam is saying still have 8 teams from each conference make it. So that no team in the East would not make the playoffs, but then seed 1 through 16 amongst those teams. Ideally, you'd like to have your 2 best teams meet in the finals. That would be better for fans. We're not there yet. There's some travel things. There still would have to be some modifications to the schedule, but that would have a fighting chance of getting 20 of 30 votes.
Welcome to the Bob Frantz Afternoon Extravaganza on ESPN 106.5 The Ticket.
I'm not one of the 30 NBA owners, but I can tell you this, it's gotten my vote. Abso-bleepin-lutely. Welcome to the Extravaganza right here on ESPN 106.5. The Ticket. We are Toledo's sports leader. Apologies if I sound subdued today a little bit. It's only because I'm going to try to keep my voice and thus my temperature both down. Thanks to Jim Cushling yesterday. Cush, appreciate you sitting in. I woke up on Sunday with one of those funks that every's getting.
That's what happens when it goes from 35 to 65.
Yeah, right on. You're exactly right. But, so many people have been sick, and I've been pushing it and fighting it off, and I succumbed to it on Sunday. It was really bad yesterday, and it's not a whole hell of a lot better today, but good enough for me to be in, and I appreciate you sitting in for me yesterday. I do side with what you just heard Brian Windhorst talking about at the end of that exceptional montage, once again put together by Cush. Absolutely reseed the NBA playoff teams 1 to 16 so that we can see what we want to see, and that is the 2 best teams playing at the end of the season, at the end of the playoffs, in the finals. And if that has to mean Golden State versus Houston, then it means Golden State versus Houston. And if an Eastern Conference team says, no way, that's not fair, okay, then here's your option. Beat Golden State or Houston. Beat them in the playoffs, and then you will go to the finals just like you always have. That is a really interesting conversation, one that we will be exploring a little bit later on in the program, in this hour, as a matter of fact. Also, more rules changes in the sports that we seem to care the most about here, at least I can say that way, and that, of course, would be the baseball pace of play adjustments. I'm just going to call them adjustments, and I'm not going to say much more about them because, what did Mom always tell you? If you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all. Well, that kind of belies the whole nature of sports talk radio. So I suppose I have to say some things about individuals that I do not necessarily like in this case. But I'm just really, really disgusted and frustrated with Rob Manfred, the commissioner of Major League Baseball. I really, really am. He came out. Kush, do you remember? Well, he reiterated it as recently as a week ago.
I touched on this yesterday because this is when this announcement came out.
Yeah, and it was about maybe a month ago, and I lose track of time sometimes, in which, Manfred essentially said, we don't need the Players Association to sign off on a pitch clock. If they don't like it, tough crap, we're doing it because it's the right thing to do about the pace of play. And it sounded like he was ready to go, and he was all fired up, and Manfred was going to make his presence felt here. And then when push comes to shove, as you just pointed out yesterday, it's like, well, we won't have a pitch clock, but we will limit the number of visits to the mound to 6 per team, which is, by the way, an extraordinarily high number of pitches to the mound for non-pitching changes. It will change nothing. That's nothing. You're scoring at home. Nothing will change. 6 trips that are non-pitching change trips? How many? Do you have stats on that, Coach?
No, unfortunately,
I would like to see
I don't.
Stats on what the average number of pitching mound conferences is in a game with or without pitching changes. Because that's 12 in a game, not counting the pitching change ones. And the pitching change one, when you've got a matchup manager like Terry Francona, for example, going lefty, lefty, righty, righty, and on down the line, those pitching changes don't count against the stats. 6, just stop out and say hi and, let's go over the signs once again, visits per game, and that's going to change the pace of play and shorten the duration of these games. What an absolutely anticlimactic end to what was a very, very, excitable prospect of finding a way to make the game, pick the game's pace up just a little bit to keep people interested a little bit more.
Yeah, a couple of things on this. One, for technicality reasons, in addition to how you spelled out, well, I'm just going to do it anyway. Well, technically they proposed these a year ago, and that's why a year later he's able to just do it or not do it, regardless of what the union thinks. Just throwing that out there technically.
But he chose not to, though.
Correct. And at the end of the day, if you're going to do, and I pointed this out yesterday when I was talking about this, because it came out yesterday, if you're going to do the mound visit thing, and yes, for the record, anybody who's watched or, like myself, umpired high school baseball of any kind, that's already there. It's less than 6, but that's the general principle of it. It's not going to affect much. The only time I could see this coming into play at all, because it's not just the pitching coach coming out. They're counting if the catcher's going to go out to the mound, too. That's going to count as 1.
Or if the shortstop wants to come up and hand him the ball and then whisper into his ear. Do they count that as 1?
Yes. Yes, they will. The only time I could really see this affecting gameplay is if you're in a high-scoring extra inning game. Then maybe you've run out of your 6 because you're going back and forth.
But they give you an extra one in the extra inning game.
Right. Then there's that. If you go to the extra innings, you get an extra free one. But the thing is...
So, in other words, in a regular 9-inning game, this will have no impact whatsoever, in my estimation.
I think it'll be minimal. And even more so, if the goal is pace of play, to me anyway, and maybe I'm just out on a limb on this one, but this is how I'm interpreting it. If the goal here is pace of play, you're doing this, but not the pitch clock thing, then it's negligible. It's kind of negligible because these mound visits are like 30 seconds or something. If you're in a situation where you're actually over that and forced to make the pitching change, well, now that's the 2-3 minute type of, between inning or during innings pitching change that we're always talking about. So for the most part, if pace of play is the goal, I feel doing this without the pitch clock, it's going to be negligible in terms of improving the pace of play thing.
Yeah, I mean it's going to literally negligible. I mean to the point of nothing. Like that's why I said this will do nothing. This will do nothing about the pace of play. The other thing that they're doing, by the way, is of course shortening commercial breaks during the regular season. Big deal. So 20 seconds less of commercials. The regular breaks between innings for commercials were 2:25. Television breaks.
Right.
Now they're 2:05.
Okay.
For the nationally televised games, they go from 2:45 to 2:25, which again is just 20 seconds difference. Postseason games will still be 2:55 because they got to make their money.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not even concerned about the long commercial breaks, to be honest with you. That has nothing to do with the, quote, pace of play.
Right.
The pace of play is that period of time in which play is happening, and whether or not it's fast enough to, capture and keep the interest of the casual fan because that's what this is all about to me. The whole idea, of course, is to increase ratings, increase ticket buyers, get more butts in the seats, and convince them that it's not boring to watch a pitch thrown every 70 seconds. By putting that 20-second pitch barrier up, which they had considered, that Manfred essentially threatened them with, saying we can do it unilaterally.
Heck, as of about a month ago, I assumed they were going to do it.
That's
by
right.
all
So
indications.
And I was so excited about that, because the bottom line is, if you look at a regular baseball game and a pitcher who, let's say, who's not a fast worker, and he's not one of the extraordinarily slow workers.
Right. Okay. Average. So an average.
You know who those guys are. The average guy. I mean, the time that it takes between, the ball being received by the catcher and returned to the pitcher, the time that it takes for both batter and pitcher to get themselves ready is ridiculous. That is what has people yawning, looking at their phones, trying to find something else to do to pass the time. There's nobody on, and we're going to stand there and act as if each pitch is the pitch that's the full count, bottom of the ninth, seventh game of the World Series pitch. I've got to make this one just right. And each hitter has to adjust every part of his body, stepping out of the box in between each pitch, and it is just a drag. It is a slow, methodical, quite frankly, I don't want to use the B word, but it is a boring process that turns fans off. So limiting mound visits and shortening commercial breaks, in my estimation, is literally pointless. The idea is keep the play moving, the pace of play moving. I mean,
the idea is to make it so that no one can
between pitch number one and the inevitable ground out to second that is coming. In a given at bat.
Yeah.
It is just pointless. The hit, and for those who don't know too, Jim, the rule modification, first of all, there's always been a pitch clock on the books.
Technically speaking, yes.
That's right. It has never been enforced, but it's always been there. All they had to do was enforce it. And in this case, they weren't even going to enforce it to its, by the letter of the law, reading in MLB rules, which I want to say is like 12 or 13 seconds. Is the way that it's written in the books. And I looked it up the last time around, but I'm trying to commit it to memory. But if there's no one on base, and thus a pitcher doesn't have to keep checking first or second or wherever it might be and keeping a runner close, in which case, of course, there will be more time spent. But if there's no runners on base that would demand a pitcher's attention, the pitcher needs to deliver the next pitch, or at least be in his windup or in his stretch and in the motion. It was like 12 or 13 seconds from the time he received the ball back from the pitcher or the catcher. Now, they were going to not even go by that, and they were going to extend that to 20 seconds, which is still a long time, plenty enough time for the pitchers to get ready, provided, of course, the hitters are ready.
And as we know, they've been doing that in the minor leagues. This will be the second or third season with that.
Third or fourth. I think they've been doing it for 3 years now.
Actually, you're right. You're right. This will be the third or fourth season, correct? Yeah.
Yeah. So the rule that they were going to put in place, again, that Rob Manfred could have done unilaterally, that baseball could have done unilaterally, because of the reason that Jim just brought up, that it was proposed a year ago, would have said that if the batter is not ready to receive the pitch within that 20-second period, then it is going to be an automatic strike called against him. So we're not just putting this all on the pitchers.
Right.
But if the batter is not ready and in the box and ready to go, the umpire will assess a strike call. If the pitcher is not delivering within that 20-second period, then they will automatically give the batter an advantage and call a ball.
That's how it's supposed to be, yes, by the rule.
Which is exactly how it should be, in my estimation, because that will keep people's attention. That will keep eyes on the pitcher and on the batter at all times, and not just this long, winding period that, quite frankly, is boring. Yeah. And I love baseball.
I do too.
So when I use the boring word there, it hurts. I don't like to say that because I like the game so much, but it really, really is. And these games dragging out to 3 hours and 15 minutes long for 9-inning baseball games because of the that pace of play that we're talking about, Jim. It's just they had a chance to deal with it here and they dropped the ball.
Yeah.
You know,
that's exactly right. They dropped the ball on this one.
And oh, by the way, did you happen to listen to Golic and Wingo this morning?
Parts of it, yeah.